All right, so we're talking about adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing real numbers. So we're going back to the basics of math here, okay? Um, so our learning targets is I can find the sum and differences. Differences is subtraction of real numbers, and I can multiply and divide real numbers. So we got a few examples here. We got our rules, and then a few more examples, and then we're gonna have you guys try these on your own, okay? So first off, we see an example of a negative plus a negative. Now, sometimes when you're working with positive and negatives, it's good to think about money, right? So if I give someone $4 and then I give someone 18 more dollars, I just gave away my money twice, right? So I never made money back. And I think it's important to think of it that way because we need to realize where on a number line this would go. So you guys don't have to do this, but one good way to sometimes think is, okay, if this is 0 and I move 4 this way, so 4 this way, right? That's -4. And 18 more this way, it's all the way over here somewhere. We can see that our answer should be a negative number, right? Because it's two negative numbers being added together. So it's just like adding two positives, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. But instead of a positive, we have a negative 22. Right. So now if we go down here, and you think of it on a number line this time as well, and you could make a nice detailed number line. I'm not doing that for time's sake, but we can go, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're at -4. And now we're adding 18. So this time we gave someone $4, but then they gave us 18 back. So now we actually went positive. So now we want 18 back when we want 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, continuous, right? So that would go all the way to wherever 18 is, which is going to finish us actually at 14. And that's where we would end up. So like 18 plus -4 plus 18, it's kind of the same thing as 18 minus 4. So you get 18, 17, 16, 15, 14. Your answer of positive 14 there. So those are pretty basic. Those you guys can just plug into your calculator once and it's perfect, right? The next one we just got to be very careful with. Parentheses, they're a new little curveball in math for you guys. You guys are going to see them a lot more now. Parentheses represent multiplication when two things are touching with nothing in between. So right here, right there, that is technically multiplication because we have technically this negative, this minus sign is a negative. That's a -1 times -18. When we have two negatives that are touching with no numbers in between them, that actually makes them turn into a positive. All right, so these two guys right here, they're going to form a positive, and then negatives are going to disappear. So what this problem actually is going to be is -4 plus the parentheses of 18. All right, and your calculator, again, would do that for you as long as you put that in exactly like you see it right there. But two negatives make a positive, okay? Not up in like example 1. This is a negative plus a negative. This is a negative and a negative that is touching with no symbols, all right, and no numbers in between them. That's when it creates a positive. So right here now, this problem actually turns out the same as example 2. We have 18 minus 4, which is going to give us 14 as our answer. Okay, these are just the parts of understanding our simple rules of addition and subtraction. All right. We got back up here. Fractions, fractions, they look scarier than they are, right? But again, you could think of it, this is money. I have $6.50, so I have $6.02, right? And then minus $4 and 3 out of 4, 3/4, it's like 75 cents, right? So you can always actually change these to decimals, which would be 6.5 minus 4.75. So you always have that option too. If you'd like to see decimals better, you can. So again, we had like $6.50, and then we spent another $4.75 on a second hot dog, right? So how much money in total did we spend? So, and if you wanted to, I'll just show you how to put this in the calculator. You can put negative 6.5. So we have negative 6.5, right? And we go ahead and do minus 4.75. So ultimately, we had that whole thing typed in there, and you end up getting 11.25. So you spent $11.25. All right. There we go. So down here, fractions. Again, these can be a pain to add and subtract. We can't just add across, so we can't just go like 1 plus 3 minus 5 on the top, and on the bottom 9 plus 81 minus 27. It unfortunately does not work like that. All right. We could change them all to decimals. That is a possibility. So you can do like 1 divided by 9 in your calculator, and that comes out to 0.111. And you can do that for 3 out of 81. You can do that for 5 out of 27. You can change them all the fractions into decimals. We also could plug them in our calculator. So we all have these calculators that have somewhere on them, they have this button it's an ABC button right there. So it says A/B/C. That pretty much means fraction. So you can see if I do 1 ABC 9, it gives me that fraction bar. So that little tiny like L right there. That's just saying it's 1 over 9. And now I actually can put them all in. I like to put them around parentheses, ABC 81, parentheses, minus, parentheses, 5 ABC 27. And I like this calculator a lot because you can see the entire problem that I've plugged in all at once. All right, so I got all my 3 fractions in there. I put them all around parentheses. All right, and then if I press enter, it gives me my answer of negative 1 over 27. All right. We will learn how to add and subtract fractions again, as well as multiply and divide. It is a little more complicated than adding and subtracting normal numbers, but we will get into those rules chapter 2. Last one example right here. Again, we have 2 negatives that are touching. These 2 negatives are going to create a positive, all right? And then you're going to get negative 2.5 plus 4.8. And you guys can always now take out your calculator again and do negative 2.5 plus 4.8. It should look something like that. And you hit enter, and you get 2.3 as your answer. Now, if you think of that one as a number line again, that's how it should be. So you got negative 2.5. So if this is 0, we know negative 2.5 is somewhere 1, 2.5 right here. Now we're going 4.8 the other way. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we know we're going to be somewhere over here, right? Just by using a number line, not looking exactly at each decimal mark, but just looking in general how we move back and forth on a number line. All right. These are super important. A lot of them we kind of know just off the top of our heads, but this is rules to multiplying and dividing, okay? So these rules hold true no matter what number, any 2 numbers in the entire world. These rules will always be the same. So a positive number times a negative number is always going to result in a negative answer, okay? So a positive times a negative equals a negative. A positive times a positive will always give you a positive number. Okay, so a positive times a positive always is going to stay positive. A negative times a negative, well, 2 negatives make a positive. And that's another one of those that we have to remember. Oops. ITIB, positive. And we kind of talked about that right up here. With these 2 negatives are touching right here, and those became a positive. So 2 negatives, a negative times a negative is going to be a positive. A positive times a positive stays positive, and a positive times a negative stays negative. All right, now the same rules apply for division. All right, A positive number divided by a negative number is going to result in a negative number. A positive number divided by a positive number is going to result in a positive number. And then a negative number divided by a negative number is going to result in a positive number. All right. So those are just rules to remember. They will become secondhand nature to you guys at some point. And then we always have this handy dandy guy that can help us out as long as we learn to plug it in correctly. So down here, we got a few more examples. We have a negative times a positive. Now remember, when there's no symbol right here, that means multiplication. All right, so we have to get used to that. Two numbers that are touching pretty much with parentheses, that is multiplication now. All right, so we have a negative times a positive. So right here, we have a negative times a positive. So this is going to result in a negative answer. The negative always takes over when there's one of them. So then we have to do 3 times 25. Negative 3 times 25. And you can think of that as money. You can think of that as quarters, right? What is 3 quarters? How many quarters is that? Or you can use your calculator. But I know that 3 times 25 is 25, then 50, and 75. So it's going to give us negative 75 as our answer. All right. So then we have our fractions down here. So we have a negative fraction, and we're dividing it actually by a positive fraction. All right. Sorry, multiplying. So we have a negative times a positive. So we go back up to the top of our chart right here, where we have a negative times a positive. And we're going to look at, okay, what's the answer going to come up to? Well, we know we're going to get another negative answer here. All right. So we know we're going to get a negative answer. And with multiplication, when we're multiplying fractions, we can actually just, we have to get something called a common denominator, which we will end up doing with you guys at some point, but we can plug these into our calculator for now. I went ahead and did that for you guys so you can see we have our negative 3 divided by 4 times 7 divided by 8. Go ahead and press enter, and we get negative 21 over 32. Okay. Again, in chapter 2, we're going to learn how to do these by hand, the fractions. There we go. Okay, example number 9. We have a negative. Again, this is multiplication right here. This is a negative times a negative. Well, negative times negatives is right here, and that's going to give us a positive answer. So negative 3 times negative 25 is going to give us a positive 75. Okay. Always use your calculator to double check yourself. All right. Now, these are where it gets tricky, and you guys are going to see more and more of these this year. This is called our base, right, and a power, and this is our exponent right here. So what this equates to is whenever you see these, and we talked about it last section, whenever you see these, that means it's multiplying by whatever the base is twice, okay? So that's actually negative 4 times negative 4. Okay, that's what it means. All right. So now you have to make sure you understand how to put that in your calculator. I'll show you guys how to do that. So we have our calculator right here. I put in my negative 4. All right. And then there's this caret button. We call it a caret. It's called your power button too. When you click it, it's saying, okay, what is negative 4 being raised to? Well, we know it wants to be raised to that little 2. So I'm going to put that 2 in right there, hit enter, and we get negative 16 because there we go. And then our last one, well, we're doing the exact same problem here. This time you're adding parentheses, negative 4, and then you're raising it to little 2. All right. And right there, you're going to get a positive 16 as your answer. Okay, so let me explain the difference between these because I explained the first one wrong. So notice how this negative 4 is within parentheses. That is saying that it wants negative 4 times negative 4. Which is why we got to the positive 16. In this problem up here, it is squaring just the 4. The negative is attached to it, but it's doing that order of operation first. So it's doing 4 times 4, which is a positive 16, and then the negative is getting tossed back in. This is where our calculator has the hardest time reading what we want it to do. And that's why it's super important when there's parentheses that you use those parentheses, right? So those are our two answers. This is negative 16. This is positive 16. So what you guys are going to do is you guys are going to work on worksheet 1 here, 1.5 and 1.6. And we're also going to have an iExcel for you guys to practice. Again, this will be your best friend through this section, just double checking your work. All right.